Uh, let me see. So, main topics I want to talk to you about today is what is so unique about hair testing, what can hair testing reveal, how mineral balancing works, heavy metals and toxic load, and fast and slow metabolic rate, because it's also determined in the hair. So, how it all started, briefly, is that in the 50s, scientists made some interesting discoveries about hair mineral levels. Low zinc levels in hair were correlated with stunted growth, dwarfism, in Egypt. In the 60s, they found more correlation. Chromium in diabetics' hair was very low, and chromium is important in glucose utilization. And so there's been a lot of research in the past decades. The EPA, the Environment Protection Agency in the US, and other government agencies use mineral analysis for biological monitoring, also routinely used in medicine and for drug testing. And hair test is basically a tissue biopsy, right? We take a tissue, we cut it from the skull and near the scalp, send it off to the lab, and they basically process it to see what minerals are there in what patterns. So this is a very highly accurate test. It's 90%, 97% accuracy, especially when we're using labs like ARL or Trace Elements Lab. We in Hire, I am as a certified HTMA practitioner, use Trace Elements Lab. These two do not wash hair samples chemically, and so their results are more accurate than other labs. And so why this previous client of ours is so happy in this picture is because, I'm just kidding, is because this test is non-invasive, it's convenient to do at home, and it's affordable. You just cut a piece of hair and you send it off to the lab. So why are we depleted in the first place? We're growing a lot of food on the same land without regenerative practices. We're using chemical fertilizers that deplete minerals from the soil. As a result, the food is about 10 times less nutrient dense than it was 50 to 100 years ago. Furthermore, we lose nutrients through processing of the food, and heavy metals are ubiquitous now. I'm going to talk about it a bit later in these presentations. Metals are directly antagonistic to many minerals through ionic mimicry, which I will explain a bit later. Okay, so how does hair test mineral analysis compare to blood labs? It's important to understand that these are different labs. Like if you ask me, for example, why is stool test different to blood labs? Well, it's completely different. It's measuring a different tissue. And why it's important? The main differences are that a hair test measures the minerals in the hair tissue during the months in which the hair grew, and we test about an inch and a half of hair closest to the scalp, and this is a reading of the mineral deposition from the previous 3 months, an average of the 3 months, okay? The hair test measures dozens of macro minerals, trace elements, and toxic metals, and this allows us to look at the longer-term metabolic trends. And a hair analysis is not a good test for what's happening inside of you right now. It's an average of 3 months. And if we compare it to the blood, when we're measuring blood, we're measuring a closed system. It's a transport medium, right? Blood is so important in the body that whatever's missing in the blood, whatever minerals are missing in the blood, the body will take those minerals from the bones and from the tissues to keep the blood as healthy as possible, because it's about survival, right? So it's a different picture in the blood than it's in the hair.
Baby.
Can everybody please mute themselves? Thank you. And so A blood analysis may be sometimes a late indicator of health problems, and a hair test can be an indicator of trends where some of your health parameters are going. And I'm going to talk about that. So with the hair, you're directly measuring a tissue, and you can extrapolate what's happening in the hair to other tissues in your body. The blood is a separate compartment of the body. It will rob tissues and bones of minerals to maintain homeostasis, the as healthy as possible state. Hair grows slowly, and so you get a long-term reading of what is going on in the cells. And blood and HTMA tests are used for different things, but can be complementary. All right, so that's why sometimes a person may feel horrible and go to a doctor and get a blood test. And the doctor will say, well, your blood labs look fine. I don't know, it's all in your head, right? Because, as I said, blood will maintain homeostasis and not always will show the problems because of just the nature of blood. It's there for survival. It's your bloodline. It's your lifeline. So the minerals may appear to be normal in the blood. In the meantime, some essential minerals may be actually significantly deficient or in excess within the cells and tissues, which is represented in the hair. And it is this deficiency or imbalance of minerals within the cells that is mostly closely related to the problems and symptoms that plague many people. So that's where the mineral balancing comes in. So when you get your test results from the hair test lab, and we interpret the results, and the goal is through mineral balancing to bring your minerals into balance, obviously. So because minerals all interact between each other, we use the knowledge acquired from all these decades of research in hair tissue mineral analysis to balance this whole system at once. Because they are all interacting between each other with the vitamins as well, not only between minerals, between the metals, between the vitamins, we balance this whole system as a system. So that's the special sauce of hair tissue mineral analysis. And I present here to you the mineral wheel. It doesn't represent all the minerals and vitamins that there are, but some of them, so that you get an idea visually of how all the minerals and vitamins interact with 3 or more of their counterparts in this wheel and beyond. So, for example, zinc deficiency can lead to copper excess. For example, if you're deficient in iron, the body can hold on to aluminum to use it's in iron's place in the cells because they are similar on the table, on the chemical table, on the elements table. How vitamins interact is also, for example, vitamin C is essential for cortisol production, which helps regulate sodium, which is a mineral, sodium retention through the hormone aldosterone. So just an idea for you to have like all the minerals and vitamins interact, and when one goes up, some can go down and so on. So when you get your test back, it will consist of all these different tables, 2 of which are represented here, but there's more. So basically, if you're not familiar with a hair test, the first kind of impression is that, oh, okay, I have a higher calcium. Calcium looks high and blah, blah, blah. Oh, and the toxic elements here, uranium and beryllium, mercury, they seem kind of low. Okay, I'm good. This is not how this test works, okay? You do not take these readings at a face value. That's why it's not like you get the test and you know exactly what to do. That's why you have to work with a practitioner who can interpret all these different interactions of these different minerals and metals and so So let's talk about these minerals. The first four are the main minerals in the body. The first four represented on the lab test. They are calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. So these first four minerals are the main electrolytes in your body, and they represent 99% of the mineral content of your body, which is a big deal. And that's why all the work in mineral balancing starts with balancing these four first minerals, and phosphorus is the fifth most important one after these four. And it's important to know that the body has evolved these intricate and elaborate mechanisms for controlling those first four elements because they're super important if they're taking up 99% of the mineral content of your body, right? And so some of those hormonal mechanisms, some of those intricate mechanisms are hormonal in nature. For example, aldosterone, that hormone, that regulates sodium retention in the tissue. Yeah, because then we see if we look at your sodium interaction with other elements, we will have an idea about your aldosterone, your cortisol, your adrenal health. Cortisol regulates potassium in your tissues. And so that's why when we look at the interaction between all these different minerals, we get a snapshot of your hormones on the cellular level. So hair test is not there to show you, oh, I'm eating too much calcium. Oh, I'm not eating enough salt, you know? This is not exactly how it works. The most important thing about this whole testing of minerals is to get an idea into your hormones, your glandular health, adrenals, thyroid. And that's where significant ratios come in. So that's another table that you get on your hair test from the lab, significant ratios. Research in HTMA shows that it's not necessarily about the individual levels of minerals, which are also important, but through the significant ratios, there are 7 of them, you can get a snapshot of your hormonal kind of metabolic health. So here is the description of these 7 ratios, significant ratios. Metabolic ratio, stress ratio, thyroid, adrenal, copper imbalance, hormone ratio, blood sugar ratio, which is also called addiction ratio, and infection ratio. So depending on how high or how low these ratios are, you can paint a picture of your health in the tissues at the cellular level. And another thing that the hair test defines, shows you, is your metabolic rate. And in HTMA, it's usually called oxidation type. So there are people who are fast metabolic, who have a fast metabolism, fast oxidizers, and they usually have an overactive thyroid and overactive adrenals. And we have a slow metabolic rate, slow oxidation also called, that's underactive thyroid and adrenals. And fast metabolizers, fast oxidizers are usually in the sympathetic nervous system. They're processing everything very fast, too fast. And slow oxidizers are stuck in the parasympathetic nervous system. Their body is processing things, the metabolism is slower, okay? So it's been shown that about 80 to 90% of people have a slow oxidation rate, slow metabolic rate, and 10 to 20, the rest have a fast metabolic rate. The ideal rate is the balanced rate. So I haven't seen that balanced rate on a test yet. Usually people are in the slow metabolic rate, and then even if they're in the fast metabolic rate, the goal is to bring them into the balanced oxidizer rate with, as much as possible ideal patterns, right? Especially these 5 big minerals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, plus phosphorus. We want to bring them into their ideal ranges. So it's not about, as I said, what you're getting from your diet, this test. It's a measurement of the effect of hormones at the cellular level that regulate this mineral metabolism in your tissues. It's a mouthful. What other insights you can get is whether you have a buildup, a hidden buildup of copper, which is toxic. A possible iodine deficiency, if shown on a hair test, then you will need to get additional testing through either an iodine loading urine test or through a specific T3, T4 calculation from a blood test. Also, you can see if you're deficient in iron or not, and it's a calculation that needs to be done by the practitioner. It's not seen on the first page of your lab test. This is one of those formulas that we have to calculate to come to a conclusion whether you are iron deficient or not, even though iron is one of the elements shown on the chart. So the goal is balance. And as I said, all the minerals work together. So in order to raise sodium, for example, you will not only need to consume more salt, but you will also need to consume sodium synergists to speed up the process. Sodium synergists are vitamins E, vitamin C, all the vitamins B, adrenal glandular is also helpful if your sodium is very low. So we're supplementing strategically to bring the whole system into balance at once. And I'm going to say it here that if you're planning on doing one hair test and then not retesting, it's kind of a waste of time and effort and money, because you want to retest every 3 to 4 months for a while to see whether your supplements are working and taking you to the mineral balance, because otherwise there's just no point of doing that. So what is the goal? The ultimate goal of all of this is to bring minerals into balance so that your cells can use those minerals in the right ratios to produce more electricity, because the more cell charge you have, the more energy the cells have to perform their functions, right? So all the health basically comes down to mitochondria producing as much energy as possible. And that's what minerals allow them to do, because minerals play electrolytes, you know about them. They play a fundamental role in producing electricity in the cells. So the more we can do mineral balancing correctly, the bigger we can grow the cell charge and redox potential, it's also called sometimes. And so benefits of mineral balancing is that we produce more energy and we increase cell permeability so that nutrients can actually get into the cell. So when you're taking all these different supplements, you're biohacking, whatever, they can actually get into the cell and be absorbed and metabolized. Because many times, for example, if people are very high on calcium, that's calcification of cells. There's calcium literally around the cell. Sometimes if the levels are 170 milligrams percent on the chart or higher, that's called a calcium shell. That's like for nutrients to get into the cell will be very problematic. So like taking just random supplements will not, it will be a waste, because you will need to work on breaking that calcium shell with strategic supplementation before your body can start absorbing more nutrients. And so mineral balancing outcomes, as we balance the minerals, the energy efficiency inside the cells rises dramatically and healing can take place then. And this means that as we balance the minerals, heavy metals are eliminated, toxic chemicals, drugs, you may have stored inside you are eliminated. Mold, infections are brought up to be dealt with, and you may have buried emotional traumas that come up to your awareness for processing. I'll just mention here that, for example, calcium shell. Calcium is a very emotional mineral, and people who have a calcium shell will be emotionally numb. And when calcium is very high, it's not only about supplements, it's actually working on healing that trauma, emotional trauma, also, in order to bring that calcium down. Because in the end, it's just, I hate to say it, but it all comes down to stress. Like, stress is the fundamental evil. It just disrupts everything. So let's talk about toxic metals. I'm reading through this really fast. I was worried that I won't be able to finish it in time, but do you guys have any questions so far? Please feel free to chime in. I'll slow down because it's bloody. Okay, no questions. Well, feel free to just interject, okay? Anytime. So, toxic metals or heavy metals. The correct term is toxic metals in this case because they bring about toxicity. So people usually think that they need like this acute extreme exposure to be affected by toxic metals, by heavy metals, like an accident with gas or, an industrial accident or something. But that's not true, unfortunately. For example, a few years ago, Mount Everest snow from the one of the highest areas there, 20,000 feet up, was analyzed, and the findings were that it was high in cadmium and high in arsenic. You would think that it's a pristine location, wouldn't be affected much by industrialization, but it's not true because, the air and the water, they move around the globe. And that's why toxic metals is such a big deal. You don't need to be living in an industrial area to be exposed. It's a global issue, and it's not talked about. So one of the problems of toxic metals is that they're very non-biodegradable. They take up to 100 years or more to biodegrade in the human body as well. It's not like only in the soil. Once they are in the body, they start to accumulate. And that's why it's a problem. The bigger the buildup is in the body, the harder it will be to resolve chronic health issues because of ionic mimicry. Because toxic metals, when they're in your body, they will take up this space on the receptor sites in the cells of where minerals should be instead. If you're deficient in some mineral, and your body has a toxic metal that looks like that mineral because it's close to it on the elements table, then it will take that toxic metal and use it instead. And that's not good news. And why it's not talked about is that, well, I don't know why, but FDA, for example, doesn't recognize aluminum as a toxic agent. It's used everywhere. It's like it's in the baking powder, antiperspirant, and water supply. And so we're displacing all these toxic heavy metals that become toxic in our body because their use in industries is going up. At the same time, they're depleted. We're depleting minerals in the soil, and obviously, as I said, because of ionic mimicry, heavy metals will be used instead of minerals in the body when there's a imbalance of minerals. And half-life of some of those isotopes of these toxic metals can be up to 92 years in the human body. So I want to talk about rice because it's quite popular, like almost everybody eats rice. Rice has an affinity to suck up arsenic from the soil if arsenic is present. And in many regions in the US, rice is grown in the fields that were used for growing cotton previously. And at that time, they sprayed the fields with a lot of arsenic for cotton growth. So arsenic is stuck in that ground. And the government and organizations don't talk about this heavy metal problem, as I mentioned before. So, for example, when it comes to rice, the rule of thumb to lower your arsenic exposure is to choose rice from the areas where there's no arsenic in the soil, California, India, or Pakistan. And because arsenic concentrates in the bran, you want to opt for white rice instead of whole rice. I know it's like, but doesn't everybody say that it's healthier to eat whole rice? The bran concentrates arsenic, unfortunately. So white rice is a better option. Okay. So ionic mimicry is what I mentioned when toxic metals replace vital minerals on the cells. So for example, lead in the brain. When lead replaces calcium in the brain, it affects the activity of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, and it's the focus neurotransmitter. So if you have lead for calcium on those receptor sites and those enzymes, then the outcome is lower IQ, hyperactivity, attention deficit, brain fog, things like that. Mercury in the brain acts like an SSRI, so you will have insomnia and OCD, and people have all sorts of, like violent outbursts. This can happen because of too much mercury. I'm going to talk about that. Mercury in the brain. And also we have to consider that all of these different toxic metals, when they are accumulated in small quantities, but you have beryllium, you have aluminum, you have arsenic, uranium, lead, cadmium, the toxic load increases. The overall toxic load is increased. Okay, so the nature intended for seafood to have selenium to fight off mercury. So seafood is loaded with selenium, but unfortunately also is nowadays loaded with mercury because of our unsustainable industrial processes, right? So mercury can influence not only selenium, but it can replace calcium, zinc, and iodine in the body. So even if the fish you're eating has a 1-to-1 ratio of mercury to selenium, mercury may exert its toxic effects on these other elements, calcium, zinc, and iodine, if they are low. So if you're deficient in one of them, mercury will be used instead of them. Okay, so then mercury bioaccumulates, and your total metal burden will be too much for your body to be able to use that selenium to protect against the effects of mercury. Processed foods also contain toxic metals, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. So that's one of the reasons why they can be detrimental. So for example, processed chicken industry uses arsenic to make chickens grow more quickly. Nickel is used in seed oils. Mercury is used in high fructose corn syrup. Aluminum is used in water supplies, etc. Cadmium, you can consume cadmium if you eat veggies and fruits that were cultivated with the use of superphosphate fertilizers. So organic, one of the reasons to eat organic is to avoid this problem, although the rain subterranean waters, all that's doing its things. It's like it's becoming a global problem. So I think I mentioned this before. So if you look at this little table from your lab report and you see small amounts of toxic metals like beryllium, like uranium is a bit high here, beryllium and cadmium and lead, almost like all of them are shown here except for antimony, which is the first one. All of them are present. It's important to understand that there is no role in the body for heavy metals. There is no way to organize them in the body. There's no mechanism. We're not designed to have toxic metals inside of us. And those metals, because of that, they don't have anywhere to go. So they're hijacking the system. They're using mineral channels to get into the cells and tissues. And so they get deposited in the liver, brain, kidneys, heart, and other tissues and organs. And this is ionic mimicry in action. Your body will use those similar elements to replace those that you are deficient in. Let's say your body needs iodine, there's not enough iodine, so there's mercury in the tissue, it looks similar, the body is going to use mercury to keep enzymatic processes going. Your body's first kind of line of action is just to keep you alive, like survival in this moment is the body's goal. It's not thinking, oh, what is gonna do with this mercury 5 days from now, 5 years from now. No, it's thinking about survival right now. So it's gonna use that. And some reasons why metals are so detrimental, not only because of ionic mimicry, but they take a long time to biodegrade. They're difficult to eliminate because when they're used by the body, instead of the nutrients they're missing, your body will hold on to them. Even if you're trying to like actively to detox, and I'll talk about detox a bit later. So if you're not putting back the missing elements strategically, the body will not let go of those heavy metals. Some people use chelation therapy, which is basically ripping out those toxic metals, which in HTMA, we think that it's not a good idea because without replacing those minerals, you can actually do yourself harm more than good by chelation. So replenishing missing minerals and gently detoxifying the metals and toxic minerals is actually a better practice and more gentle and leads to better outcomes. And just remember that when you're constantly re-exposed to small quantities of toxic metals, you're accumulating them, and because you're accumulating them in small quantities, you may not notice a clinical effect or a symptom effect for many years. So something to keep in mind. Another section in the lab test toxic ratios. It shows you some of the relations between these toxic minerals and macronutrient minerals that we want actually. So this table, you want to see all of them high because where they show low, like the second, third, and fourth, for example, it's the relationship between iron and lead, iron and mercury, selenium and mercury, and later on zinc to mercury and sulfur to mercury. And this is showing that this person has more toxic mercury than any other toxic metal, some lead as well. So this mercury is affecting the iron, the selenium, the zinc as well. So another way of getting information from the hair test mineral analysis. Yeah, this is important also to touch on copper excess. because sometimes you get a report and the copper will be high on the report itself, but sometimes many times it looks normal. But if you do calculations, we have 12 different factors to take into consideration. You will actually see, especially in slow oxidizers, that there is a copper toxicity. And together with heavy metals, it's a growing problem because after the World War II, we've had this widespread use of female contraceptives, and there is a close relationship between estrogen and copper in biochemical systems. The estrogen pill for contraception and estrogen replacement therapy for menopause, when we do that, we increase estrogen and excess copper builds up in the cells as well. And over the course of the past few generations, there's been a significant transfer of excess copper to male children as well in utero. So it's not only a women's problem. It's becoming everybody's problem now. So because it bioaccumulates as well, passing it from like a high copper mother will pass it on to her children from generation to generation. And how it can start as well is because when we are stress again, large amounts of magnesium are lost from the body tissues, and also large amounts of zinc. That's just how minerals work. If you're stressed, your sodium goes up, and then the magnesium is lost, and zinc starts to be lost. And when you decrease zinc, your copper will go up because they have an antagonistic relationship. And so when your copper goes up, it builds up and has a toxic effect. We need copper in very small quantities. And because copper and calcium both drive potassium down, when copper increases, potassium levels will be lowered and calcium levels will increase with copper as well. And this will slow down the activity of the thyroid gland, especially in women as well. To add to that, women's own estrogen production will contribute to a larger accumulation of excess copper. And if she's on a birth control pill or using a copper IUD, then her levels will be off the chart. And as I said, it's not something that you would usually see on the hair mineral analysis straight up. You will have to have a practitioner calculate, see all those 12 factors, and see if you actually do have a hidden copper toxicity. And so what are the symptoms of this copper toxicity? They're listed here. You can take a screenshot if you want. But there are a lot of them, and usually they come in clusters. Yeah, it's because some of these can obviously have a different cause. For example, dry skin could be low thyroid, but not necessarily because of a copper, or headaches could be caused by heavy metals, or there could be many different problems. But if you have several of these, it points also to a big possibility that you have problem with copper buildup, and it's hidden. Do you have any questions so far? Is it too much information? Okay. Oh, is a question. Oh no. You don't have a question, Marcia?
No, I was just kind of giggling because I'm trying to follow along with my test. I'm
Okay,
like,
good.
yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for chiming in. All right, so detoxification. So I was talking to a client recently, and she said, "What if I just don't feel good? What if I do a detox? What if I go on a juice fast?" We have this myth, and it might have worked. Like it probably was a very good detoxification protocol like 100 years ago to just drink green juice, because we didn't have that toxic load. We didn't have like hormone replacement therapies, birth control pills, and crap in our soil, and like depletion of minerals and all these heavy metals. So it was probably a good idea. But nowadays, when you're drinking vegetable juice, you're not doing anything. In fact, you may be even consuming more heavy metals, depending on the where your juice is coming from, because plants, they actually extract heavy metals from the soil. So many vegetables, especially if they're non-organic, if they're grown in carelessly in like industrial ways, they will have those heavy metals in them. So juicing is not a good idea for detox. It's not going to do much. You may feel better because you're cutting out like crappy processed foods or sugar or whatever. You're getting some minerals from the juice for sure, but this is not gonna change your life. So how proper detox actually looks like is, I've pointed out here three main things. It's opening up the detox pathways, mineral balancing, and tending to circadian rhythm. And let me tell you like more about this and why. So we want to target the organs of elimination. We want to actively clean them up. So that's your liver, kidneys, gut, and skin. So taking supplements that support liver and kidneys, taking probiotics, prebiotics, taking binders that help you evacuate these toxic metals, mold, and plastics, and everything that, like pesticides, everything, through this tool. Infrared sauna helps you sweat out toxic metals. Lymph drainage helps you clean your lymph. Coffee enemas are there to help you trigger bile secretion from the liver, because bile is one of those juices of the body that clear toxins from the body. And also coffee enemas trigger an enzyme that helps you produce more glutathione, which is one of the main antioxidants of the body. It's like an anti-aging antioxidant. And doing liver and gallbladder flushes. We have more info on that in the onboarding course, in the protocols. I would recommend reading Andreas Moritz's book that's mentioned there to do it properly. Highly recommend doing that. I haven't seen yet anybody who hasn't flushed any stones from their gallbladder. People think that there are stones only in the gallbladder, but actually it's been confirmed through autopsy that people can have stones even in the liver. They're not like stones. Sometimes they can be calcified and hard, but they're usually just accumulations of stuff. It's like a mixture of bile and toxins. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, the information is great. Thank you. And oops, sorry, one sec. So doing that liver and gallbladder flush monthly until nothing else comes out, like no stones are left, is a good idea, because we're so ridden with toxins. Actually, it's not funny. So that's the first thing. We want to target physically those organs of elimination, to physically clear them out, not by drinking juices, but actually working on them physically. Also, castor oil packs and on the liver, and dry brushing. So, for example, I like to stack things because it's just so much sometimes that we should do, right? And I know some of you are already taking a lot of supplements. And this been our talk lately, right? It's been in the air lately in higher about like habit stacking and supplements. And so if you're doing sauna, for example, what I do is like how I stack three things right now. I dry brush my body upwards in circular motions, always driving your lymph towards here, the clavicles, because this is the main drainage area for the lymph. Starting at the feet and brushing upwards for a couple of minutes with a dry brush, natural dry brush, and then popping on the castor oil pack on my liver and laying down in the infrared sauna blanket for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm going to add coffee enemas also, and I've done a series of liver and gallbladder flushes. Obviously, you don't need to do everything at once, but just you can do some things that are simpler together with some more elaborate thing. Let me check the chat. Okay, sure. Jack is asking about that book. It's Andreas Moritz. Okay. Oh. All right. So the second thing, obviously, you want to replenish minerals that are missing. And sometimes it's taking some minerals directly, and many times it will be taking synergists that help grow that mineral that you don't have enough of. So we work primarily on four bigger minerals, the first four electrolytes: calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. That's the main goal. And also, if people are in slow oxidation, bringing them more to balanced, and also if they're fast oxidation, bringing them more into balanced if possible. It takes longer to bring a slow oxidizer into balanced than a fast oxidizer. And that's why it's so important to retest and see if the supplements you're taking are still working, or you like have you rectified some of those issues, and do you need to remove or substitute some supplements? That's why retesting is key here. And again, as I said, mineral balancing program, the goal is to raise your energy production in the cells, to raise that cellular charge, redox potential, the electricity that your mitochondria in the cells produce, so that your body has the energy in each cell to do its functions properly. And why do we need to tend to the circadian rhythm and do all the natural things as much as we can? Sun exposure, grounding, seasonal living, exposing ourselves to the elements. Like when it's hot outside, be outside at some point, like sweat it out. If it's cold outside, lose a layer, like go in the snow and be there for a while, ground and expose yourself to these extremes a little bit. We're too comfortable. Our bodies are not designed to live like that all the time in this, artificial light and with a comfortable temperature. This is killing us actually. So when we do these natural things, the sun, the cold, the grounding, when we spend time in the green forest, we get infrared light, we get the green into our eyes, we heal, we reduce stress, we get back into homeostasis. So if you live in the city, just even getting like planning a weekend outside in nature, or at least in a park is a good idea. What all of these practices do is also raise your energy production in the cells. There is no detox possible when your cell charge is low, especially when you're in a slow ox pattern. That's seen because when a person is a slow metabolizer and I look at their chart, many times they will not have any heavy metals represented there. This doesn't mean they don't have them. It means that they're poor eliminators because they're stuck in slow oxidation. Their cells don't have the energy to excrete those heavy metals and show them in the tissues. So yeah, that's what I've had prepared for you so far, guys. If you have any questions or if you want me to expand on some of these topics, we can schedule another call, or I can add it under the class, under the master class. Mallory looks very serious.
I did have a question, Daria. Can you like maybe just talk a little bit more about that last point you just made about sometimes if we have a slow metabolism, and your toxins are showing us like low or not
Non-existent.
present,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have them.
Mhm.
So I guess how would you then understand the impact of toxins on the body? Like, how would you know which toxins are potentially impacting you if you're not getting that registration on the test? Are there other ways or avenues of being able to detect what those are?
Great question. So, what we do is on your first test, if we don't see anything, we know they're there because nobody is free of heavy metals. It's just very useful to know which ones because sometimes not all binders work on all of them. Sometimes you need other supplements to get rid of different toxic metals. And so after your first test, you start working on bringing your slow oxidations more towards the center to be a balanced oxidizer. So as your energy grows, as your pattern changes gradually from slow oxidizer to a balanced oxidizer, you will start seeing on the retest, you may start seeing already small quantities of those heavy metals being shown because your body has now more energy because it's processing stuff quicker because it got some of those minerals that were missing. So that's why retests are important. There's like, even when we're analyzing something, the first question I'm looking at is this a first test or a retest? Has this person been working on mineral balancing or not? Because if they, it gives me more information. If you're a slow oxidizer now, there are 4 different types of slow oxidizer, 1, 2, 3, and 4 also of fast oxidizer. So I know when you will be moving towards the center is when you are getting more energy and the program is working. But it's a process. It's not going to be in 3 months that you're going to be a balanced oxidizer. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Hope it was helpful.